So, thanks for joining in, and thank you to any replay viewers, and thank you to any podcast listeners as well, because I'm pulling the audio from this and pushing it into a podcast as well. So, on my board, I've written how to defeat Trumpism so that we can brainstorm about how to do that. Hang on, I'll just do this for a moment. How to defeat Trumpism. And then I can go back to my screen today, which has the topic of John Bolton, because of course we're dealing with this revelation that John Bolton had put in his manuscript to sell pages of information about how Trump was wanting to continue to put a hold on Ukraine military aid in direct contravention of the Impound Control Act and in direct contravention of separation of the powers under the constitutional frame that supposedly governs America, that Trump was extorting Ukraine for help with his scheme to cheat the American people of a free and fair election by abusing his oath of office to seek to covertly initiate an investigation into his likely political rival for the 2020 elections. So let's see if we've got anybody. Hey, we've got Harvested Beats, Brian, Paul, and Caroline. Some of my favorite people. So lovely to see you. Thanks for joining in. That's really exciting. How are you guys feeling about the news? We know that this increases pressure on Republican senators, increases pressure for them to support a vote for witnesses. Although other people who talk to Republicans on the Hill prior to this explosive revelation about Bolton and what he is prepared to publish, although not tell his country via a microphone or via a House inquiry or a Senate inquiry, the truth about Trump's scheme to break multiple laws, to be an extortionist, to cheat the American people out of their election, to abuse his position as president, to run illicit schemes involving his personal lawyer, involving subverted actors from the State Department who were engaged in running a parallel foreign policy, one that didn't seek to promote the interests of the American people, one that sought to promote only the re-election campaign of Donald Trump. Yes, Kobe is the dominant news story on TV. Are they making even a little bit of time for the Bolton revelation, or no? It's just looming large on Twitter, but not in real life. Well, not real life, mainstream television. How convenient for them. Well, Paul's been very sick. I'm sorry to hear that. Hi, Jeff. Thanks for joining in as well. I see you. So we've got five lovely people with me right now. And 26 people in general, which is nice viewing numbers for us. Thank you, viewership. Nothing on the news. Oh, my Lord. All right. Well, let's still do our job and talk about it, because here is a comment from Jennifer Rubin, a conservative columnist, also someone who has the moral fiber to oppose Trump. And she writes, not only does Bolton's evidence blow the entire defense, but it reveals that Trump lawyers have been lying to senators' faces in denying direct evidence of the quid pro quo, because the National Security Council has had the manuscript of John Bolton's book for weeks. So yes, Trump's lawyers are like mob lawyers who know their client is guilty, but they're doing their job to defend the indefensible, which must be a hard job when your country's national security and your country's interests are being betrayed as a consequence of your actions. All right. Josh Marshall, a journalist, writes, it's helpful to see this particular fact confirmed, but it is really profoundly disgraceful that he denied this information to lawful and constitutional judicial inquiry while revealing it for what it remains, a private business project. Yes, Bolton was only prepared to tell the truth about Trump's misconduct and criminality to the purchasers of his book. I did see someone say reluctantly on Twitter that if Bolton testifies or if he goes to a microphone and admits the truth, then he will buy Bolton's book as a reward for not running with his baser instincts and participating in the cover-up of Trump's behavior. If he doesn't abandon America to the rule of a aspiring dictator who's done a great job of obstructing oversight and checks and balances to the extent that his powers will be more unleashed if and when the Republicans work with their most base and self-protective instincts, if they try to keep Trump covered up in order to protect their own potentially criminal behavior from being exposed as well. And that's always the risk, that the Republicans are in so deep into criminal behavior themselves that they are obliged to defend the criminal president, because his continuing occupation of the Oval Office may be the only thing protecting them from law enforcement. Bill Barr, the corrupt, malignant presence of Bill Barr in the role of Attorney General, may be the only thing protecting them from prosecution. We don't know how far up to their neck Republicans are immersed in crime themselves. So let's see. McConnell told Fox News weeks ago that he was synced up 24/7 with the White House counsel's office on Donald Trump's trial. The White House counsel typically reviews manuscripts. So when Mitch marched his caucus over the public opinion cliff on witnesses and documents, he likely knew Bolton would obliterate Donald Trump's impeachment defense. All right, so yes, there is a reason why Mitch McConnell has been so stoutly against witnesses, even though 71% of Republicans that have been polled have said they want witnesses. I mean, their interest in witnesses is probably because they believe Trump about Biden and they want to see Biden being made to be a witness. But at the same time, they still thought that whatever witnesses would come forward to testify about Trump's behavior, direct witnesses, would be able to exonerate him, because Republicans believe in Trump's innocence, or at least presumably a significant portion of them do. Let's check out comments. Craig says, "For all you do, Kat, thank you." Oh, and Caroline joins in too. The man-child was upset that Jared was on the Time cover. Steyer and Bloomberg could make the reward a reality. Are we talking about rewarding Bolton for telling the truth? The defense team has 3 more days to spin and come up with a new defense. Oh, really? Because they testified on the defense team were on Saturday, and they're going to be on again on Monday, tomorrow. So why do they have 3 more days? Trump to announce Mideast peace plan on Tuesday, so timely. You're not sure all Republicans want to defend him. They fear a backlash from Trump. Yes, but they possibly also fear criminal exposure. Oh, yes, buy up Bolton's books. Indeed. If Bolton testifies, maybe people will buy his books to reward him. Fox News is likely to start smearing John Bolton. Radio Tom, what's Tom's surname? He pointed that out, that what's likely to happen going forwards is Fox to smear Bolton and Senate Republicans doubling down on, oh, well, too late, the House should have had Bolton testify there. Of course, John Bolton could testify in the House. The House hasn't closed up shop. They could institute a new article of impeachment, hold some more hearings, etc. We all know there is no shortage of criminal behavior to investigate in relation to Trump's activities. Trump just gave a mysterious message to Schiff. And Lev Parnas's attorney, Joseph Bondi, is leaking info on Twitter. Well, here's a curious thing. That tape, that 40-minute tape of Trump talking to Parnas and others at a donor dinner, that was apparently from Igor Frum's phone. So Igor Frum might be cooperating with the Southern District of New York now. We don't know. So Ricochet says it's going to be a slaughter tomorrow. Can you please... Oh, why have I still left that message up? We'll put this message up instead. Oh, because they've got 3 days. I understand Caroline's message now. She was saying they have 3 days for a defense, so they can spread it over 3 days. They're allotted 24 hours. But Saturday's already gone. That's one of their days, isn't it? Check out Seth Abraham breakdown of that dinner. Okay, I will. I know he was doing a live tweet thread that was interrupted by breaking news about Bolton. So let's have a look. Yes, people are criticizing TMZ for breaking news of Kobe's death in a helicopter crash before the family had been notified. I guess all ways to find out that your family has perished in a helicopter crash are awful, but I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses for TMZ being terrible and breaking with normal courtesy and protocol. All right, so I will search Bolton so we can discuss the best of Twitter. Hashtag Bolton. All right, so yes, the former national security advisor. Let's not forget who Bolton is before Fox News starts describing him as a coffee boy. Somebody's got a dating show? Oh, yes, the venomous threat that Trump tweeted out to his followers saying that Schiff hadn't paid the price for what he's done to our country, which is, of course, stochastic terrorism, whereby someone just puts out messages into the world inviting other people to take up the cudgels and to do violence on their behalf. So Trump was, of course, inviting people to murder Adam Schiff. And yes, good to report Trump. At the same time, we can recognize that Trump is essentially the engine of Twitter. He drives a lot of growth for Twitter, and he drives a lot of interaction on that platform. So it's unlikely that Jack will ever act in an ethical fashion. But at the same time, that shouldn't deter us from acting with moral courage. Not that it even requires much moral courage or any moral courage to report Trump, but more broadly speaking, yes, we still need to condemn Trump's behavior, even when there are unlikely to be consequences. We still have to keep shooting for that basketball hoop in the hope that at one point there consequences occur, and also to signal to other people what we believe the right course of action to be, to build consensus so that people can see, yes, a lot of decent people out there think Trump's behavior is unconscionable and destructive to America and American interests. Is Ricochet a troll? Oh, no, it's not sarcastic terrorism, darling. I'll type it out so everybody can see. It's a fairly stochastic terrorism. It's essentially violence by proxy. So, yeah, Caroline's got it. Wow, Caroline, you're watching on 2 different devices. Hello, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Ave Mia Jewel. But welcome to a fellow Australian. So yes, Parnas's lawyer is leaking information on Twitter, but also Igor Frumm might be cooperating with the authorities. Not confirmed yet. Let's talk about Mike Pompeo's actions. He was being questioned by an NPR reporter. Her surname is Kelly, Sarah Kelly, perhaps. And she asked him what he'd done to defend Marie Yovanovitch. And he said, I've always defended everybody on the team. We've got a great team. So with his statements, he was excluding Marie Yovanovitch from being on the team. He was signaling to Trump supporters that Trump is right. So Mike Pompeo, without specifically saying Marie Yovanovitch doesn't qualify to be considered a State Department employee, he was signaling to people who were already bought into that narrative that, yes, she didn't support Trump. Marie Yovanovitch has testified under oath that she never went around saying that Trump was going to be impeached, so you could safely ignore him. Those are things that Lev Parnas and Igor Frumm said to Trump to help persuade him to fire Marie Yovanovitch, to clear the way for Giuliani and others to try to trade corruptly in Ukraine, to try and get rid of Marie Yovanovitch, who would have been an obstacle to corruption flourishing in Ukraine, because she was part of efforts to oust corrupt Ukrainian prosecutors who were using prosecution cases as a political cudgel and failure to prosecute corrupt businesses as a way of promoting business corruption. Oh, it says new comments. We can cheer Lev Parnas's lawyer, but at the same time, he's not being 100% honest. And I wouldn't trust anything that he says about Marie Yovanovitch, because he's pretending that the surveillance on her is something to not be taken seriously. The WhatsApp messages that reveal Marie Yovanovitch was being stalked. They were monitoring that her phone was turned off, that her computer was turned off, and monitoring her location. So clearly with an eye to assassinate her if need be. Parnas laughs that off because, hey, it's the 5th. He has every right to not admit to things that will implicate himself in a criminal plot to murder someone. So I can be happy that Parnas is leaking through his lawyer, but I don't trust Parnas. He is a mobster who worked for Dmitry Firtash, and I don't feel like I have to agree with the enemy of my enemy is my friend. He's not my friend. Mobsters are still the enemy of democracy and justice in the West. It's just cool to watch mobsters turning on each other a little bit. Jason suggests that Lev Parnas fears the Department of Justice before Russian mobsters. I don't know how you arrive at that position, because the Department of Justice is also infiltrated by the Russian mob, because Bill Barr is protecting Trump, a Russian asset, which means he's working to advance the interests of the Kremlin. Did we see the Hyde dude interviewed by Cuomo? No, but that dude is a drunk, isn't he? I've seen little snippets of what Robert Hyde has to offer. He was not directly tailing Marie Yovanovitch himself. He was a conduit. He was copy and pasting messages from another mobster to who was Hyde communicating with? Giuliani? No, Parnas, perhaps. Oh, Lev said he was more scared of Barr. Oh, well, that's understandable. He didn't want to be murdered in prison like Epstein, because he might be able to bring Trump down if he was listened to in a court system. Yes, we don't know who has been leaking Bolton's manuscript. That is the curious thing. Let's see. Oh, we have a 24-minute ago breaking statement from Bolton's lawyer. Okay, so Bolton's lawyer wrote that he submitted a book manuscript as explained in his cover letter, notwithstanding our firm belief that the manuscript contained no information that could reasonably be considered classified, and on the assurance that the process of reviewing submitted materials is restricted to those career government officials and employees regularly charged with responsibility for such views, and that the contents of Ambassador Bolton's manuscript will not be reviewed or otherwise disclosed to any persons not regularly involved in that process. It is clear, regrettably, from the New York Times article published today that the pre-publication review process has been corrupted, and that information has been disclosed by persons other than those properly involved in reviewing the manuscript. So I guess that's nice, because that's like confirmation that it's true material that's been revealed. So Bolton, through his lawyer, is confirming that, yes, extracts from his pre-publication book manuscript have been leaked, and that, yes, he is the kind of corrupt traitor who would wait to reveal the truth to the American public until after the impeachment trial had passed. So who's saying he will be escorted out? Oh, are you talking about Trump? Yes, Trump. Bolton may have leaked it himself. That would be nice, wouldn't it? He may be afraid of Trump blocking publication of his book altogether. So Bolton's creating some pre-publication interest in his book and demand for the book to be released. He's making it more controversial for Trump to block publication of Bolton's book by giving the public a taste for the explosive material contained in the book. That is one potential theory. All right, so let's see what else we've got with the Bolton. Let's see if we can refresh that. Oh, no, I don't want to go to Bolton's. Oh, that's okay, dear child. I didn't see you. So yes, Bolton draft book manuscript says Trump tied Ukrainian aid freeze to political outcome. I feel like the word political is a bit of a cover-up there, because it's not just political, as in anything to do with governance. And people can use the word political to describe affairs of government. It's personal. It's Trump's personal endeavor to cheat Americans out of an election in 2020, a fair election. It's an abuse of power, and I'm trying to find simple ways of talking about it. Trump misused public funds to try to force the Ukrainian government to participate in a secret scheme to frame Joe Biden. To force the Ukrainians to produce a sham investigation into a former vice president of the United States and a top contender for being Trump's political opponent for the 2020 elections. So the House impeachment managers have said that senators should insist that Mr. Bolton be called as a witness and provide his notes and other relevant documents. The Senate trial must seek the full truth, and Mr. Bolton has vital information to provide. Yep, well, that's all true. Other people have pointed out that executive privilege shouldn't cover documents, because documents can't reveal anything that can't be vetted first. You can vet a document and then share it with the senators in a trial situation. A person can take to the stand and perhaps off the cuff reveal some information that's supposed to be secret. But yes, it would be great if Bolton would just go to a microphone and say, yes, this is what I would say under oath. This is what transpired. Just to make it a little bit more newsworthy in the current context of America being very sad about the early death of the basketball giant Kobe. Did you hear that, honey? Did you see Kobe died? You did. And his daughter, who was apparently aspiring to be in NBA basketball as well. My husband's just come back up from playing with the kids. All right, let's see if there's any more comments for me to reply to. Elaine from Louisiana says Biden wasn't even a candidate then. No, I think a lot of the activity towards extorting Ukraine transpired on the day after Biden announced his candidacy. And even before then, before he announced, there was obviously still considerable buzz around the prospect of Biden running. Oh, no, I don't have to be with my kids. That's okay. My husband is with them. Quality time with their father. Did you have fun, kids?
Yeah.
Yeah? Oh, you're going downstairs again? Okay. Oh, you're swimming. Is that what's happening?
Well, one of them.
One of them. Okay. Is my staying? It's blah, blah, blah. All right. Trump excuser muted. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Trump is getting an investigation out of Ukraine now, just not the one he wanted. Excellent. Bolton has given all you Republicans that live in fear of Trump a way out. Do you have the courage to take it? So yes, for any Republicans that aren't themselves personally mired in criminal behavior, that aren't personally depending on Trump staying in office, Bill Barr retaining his position as Attorney General to evade criminal prosecution and possibly jail time, any non-criminal Republican, now is your chance to stand up. There's good reason to fear death threats from Trump supporters. It's true. But death threats are death threats. And moral courage in defense of your country is also key. And white supremacy isn't a true goal to support. The white supremacy of Hitler might have enthused a lot of people, but it did not bring peace, prosperity, or success to the German nation. Oh, here we go, looking at the House impeachment manager's statement. One more sentence that we should consider. There can be no doubt now that Mr. Bolton directly contradicts the heart of the president's defense and therefore must be called as a witness at the impeachment trial of President Trump. Oh, Susan Simpson, who's an excellent reporter who you should follow, and her account, if you can see, is The View from LL2. That's the name of her Twitter account. She says what Bolton describes in his book is not the same quid pro quo arrangement described by Sondland, Taylor, Morrison, et al. So she's highlighted that Trump told Bolton that he preferred sending no assistance to Ukraine until officials had turned over all materials they had about the Russia investigation that related to Mr. Biden and supporters of Mrs. Clinton in Ukraine. Oh, that's interesting, because it does muddy the waters a little bit, because then there is not the same consistency in the story of the quid pro quo. So she's good to pick up on that, because I think I'd seen that extract before and just still seen investigation related to Mr. Biden. But they're talking about the Russia investigation. So in Mr. Bolton's book, he's describing something from the Mueller investigation that Trump is withholding aid on the condition of officials turning over materials from the Russia investigation that related to Mr. Biden. That's just odd. That's just odd and possibly deliberately confusing from Bolton. So let's see what else Susan has to say and check to see if there's any more comments. Jason's thankful for the reporting and the journalist. Yes, Harvested Beats, I agree that there are many Republicans still willing to say that perhaps the corruption happened, but it doesn't warrant removal. And that Trump is still trying to pursue a fake narrative that validates that exonerates Russia from all of the findings of intelligence agencies, not just in the US, but internationally, that Russian intelligence agencies attacked the US and attacked the integrity of their election, attacked their election servers, pushed intelligence officers to act as American citizens and to organize rallies, to increase division and to promote community concern about movements such as the Black Lives Matter movement, so that they could give way to their fears that they might have that slavery would be recreated with a different color scheme, that if the Black Lives Matter people succeeded, if they weren't curtailed by Donald Trump succeeding the presidency, to the office of presidency, that Black people would in fact enslave white people in an Old Testament version of vengeance for all of the years of oppression and persecution. You can frequently see white people being afraid of a literal inversion of their white supremacist world order, that they think Black people are literally desirous of putting white people in chains. And that's one conviction that drives their commitment to keeping weapons of death. We always block people who insistently demand to know where I live. That's a troll position, and we block it. So thanks, moderators, in advance. Mia asks, is Trump a Russian asset and pro-KGB, or is he just acting at the behest of Russia because he's so in debt? Well, that's how Russia creates Russian assets. They find people, put them in debt, flatter them, all manner of carrot and stick techniques can combine together to make someone emotionally and morally indebted to you, so that you jump when they say jump, without necessarily even realizing that they're completely and utterly in your thrall. So I don't think your two assertions are in any way exclusive of each other. I think both are true. I think that, as has been revealed recently, Deutsche Bank was the only bank to give Trump loans, but it was backed by payments through the Russian state bank, funneling money to Deutsche Bank to help guarantee those billion-dollar loans to Donald Trump, which was obviously a bad call in terms of the bank being able to recoup its investment in Trump, but is a good decision if you see it as Russia paying for Trump. So even if they paid billions of dollars, that was their gamble in ending international sanctions against Russia and in carving out a pathway for Russia to militarily acquire neighboring countries, to forcibly take over countries that had freed themselves from the grasp of the Soviet Union, to be returned and inflanked by Russian military might, unimpeded by the actions of a unencumbered American president. So you have an American president significantly encumbered by debt, guaranteed by Russian state banks, putting a significant amount of pressure on him to end sanctions against Russia as soon as possible. Sally Cat is pointing out that Trump also wants to be America's Putin. True, he expresses a lot of praise for despots around the world. He says Kim Jong-un is loved by his people and a great golfer. He says nice things about Putin as well. All right, let's see what's trending in the US. How far down is Bolton trending? Well, pretty far down. $13. Hey guys, are you going to be cool? Okay. All right. Let's search Bolton some more to see what the latest commentary is. Latest. Somebody suggests that there's two paths forward for the Senate. Yes, either they vote for witnesses or they acknowledge that the trial is a sham. Yes, so they're unlikely to acknowledge that the trial is a sham, but the American people may broadly recognize that the trial is a sham and that Republicans are engaged in a mass cover-up. So Trump to his base. Has Trump actually said this, I wonder? Bolton suggesting I told him to hold funds to Ukraine until they investigate the Bidens is impossible. The reason, this sounds like a parody. The reason why is because Bolton has never been in the Oval Office. As well, I've never talked to him. Case closed, fake news. All right, what is this in response to? Let's check it out. That's OAN Network. We don't follow OAN Network, but it is still interesting to know what Trump supporters will say to themselves to rationalize supporting Trump, even in the face of evident criminality. Do you entertain the narrative that Trump is mafia-like? Indeed, I do. Is that a troll as well? Doctor, it sounds kind of like a troll name. So the bank thing seems too sloppy. Your country is in soft occupation by Russia, and they're pretty subtle with cash flow. I think it was still a fairly complicated series of bank transactions to Deutsche Bank. Alexander, what country are you in? Soft occupation by Russia? Are you in Ukraine? Whatever happened to Trump's taxes being released? Asked Paul. The House pursued Trump's taxes through a lot of avenues. We're waiting for a Supreme Court judgment that may possibly occur by March or June. Probably June. They've already, various district courts have said that, yes, Trump's tax returns should be revealed to the House as part of oversight measures, but we're waiting on that. Serbia. Okay, yeah, Ukraine is full occupation. So, yes, this is not just an American problem. It's going to spread if he isn't defeated. It's true. Essentially, this is a war against between Russia and the rest of the world. And it's a war between fossil fuel investors and the rest of the world. And Putin, the leader of Russia, is just one of the largest and most influential and unethical fossil fuel executives in the world as well. Well, we should very quickly block the other account that's now threatening me. So let me just highlight the person that needs blocking because that's a threat, isn't it? Bad move on my part. Ooh. I mean, of course, the act of threatening is not necessarily to achieve anything violent. It's also to intimidate. So Alexander says fossil fuel is accurate, but the leader is the Koch network. One of them has at least died, and the other Koch brother still exists. But yeah, I think it's broader than the Koch network, although they have certainly bought a lot of politicians in the US. Yes, Putin is more corrupted than Trump. Trump doesn't enjoy getting shamed for things. So when he has less of a hold on the American public, and he knows it. So when the Iran war that Trump was hoping would lift his popularity was not supported by the majority of Americans, and specifically for Trump, not supported by the majority of his followers, he dropped it. He dropped the escalation of that war. We need to hold our power. Hold our powder and spread it out over the next 9 months. Limbus Van is arguing that the coronavirus is better for Trump than a war with Iran. What's your argument with that? For that? And yes, I will agree with Andel12, who says that Putin is smarter than Trump. Yes, well, obviously Putin is the mob boss and Trump is the mob asset. Trump certainly betrayed the Kurdish fighters, and considering they were co-combatants with American forces for 5 years in a war being waged against ISIS, there would have been a lot of people in the military finding it difficult to support Trump in that moment when he capitulated to Turkey's request to invade northeastern Syria. He withdrew forces so that the Kurdish fighters were left exposed, and that there was a massacre of Kurdish people. Harvested Beat says, was it to lift his popularity? I think it was just to create a distraction from his trial. I would make a counterpoint to you, Harvested Beats, and anyone else listening, that during wartime, people typically vote for incumbent presidents. People don't like to rock the boat when their country has already been destabilized by military conflict. And if you watch, The Daily Show did a compilation of, actually they just did a video that Trump had made himself when Obama was in power, saying to camera that Obama was going to have to start a war with Iran to lift his popularity, and that was a pathetic endeavor, but it was definitely what this unpopular president was going to do. And the Daily Show just added a crystal ball in front of it because the footage they used didn't reference Obama's name. So you could see Trump saying, an unpopular president is going to start a war with Iran to lift his popularity, and it's pathetic. And that 1 minute long video was probably quite influential because it did so effectively skewer Trump and his point of view in showing that he believed war with Iran would elevate the popularity of an American president. Sally Cat thinks that the virus is less deadly than SARS if the Chinese statistics are true, but we don't know necessarily if the Chinese statistics are true because China is essentially a totalitarian country. And like Chernobyl, totalitarian leaders do not behave truthfully, do not reveal the truth to the public if they think it reflects badly on their prospects for success in the future. Okay, can we get rid of that other troll? Because that Vega troll is quite trollish and very violently aggressive. So we don't need that. But it does bring up an important point for us to talk about, which is a lot of Trump's emboldenment is to do with threat perception. So Americans that support Trump felt that people were under-addressing the risk of Islamic extremism. Islamic extremism, terror. Extremist Islamic terrorism. And so some people's answer to that is just very contrarian. So whatever the left is doing, it's not enough. But if you ask them how far they want to go, essentially their arguments go to a place that sounds very much like put all Muslim people and expel and imprison all Muslims. And I'm just going to put expel and imprison millions. And to the rest of us, that sounds like war, which is a bad thing. Oh, I've just realized you can't see that, so we'll go over to here. Now you can. So here we go. Threat perception, Islamic extremist terrorism. On the right, people who contrarily want to do whatever people in power are doing now. They want to say it's inadequate. We still feel uneasy and scared. More needs to be done. Donald Trump's the only person prepared to do more, prepared to have a Muslim ban, prepared to put up walls, prepared to do whatever you tell us not to do. So it's essentially a contrarian position of just driven by fears of not enough. So whatever you do, not enough. They want more, and their thirst drives them towards war. Because Hitler got away with imprisoning millions and killing millions of people for a while, but eventually enough people are repulsed by that, and also because doing these things, expelling and imprisoning millions of people, is very corrosive for people's soul, and you start to get an appetite for violence. It's all very Freudian, actually. Freud called it thanatos, or death wish. So you start to hunger for violence. You almost start to hunger for your own glorious death in battle, and you just start to willy-nilly pursue policies and outcomes that lead to death on a mass scale. Alexander's got some nice commentary happening here. Let me check it out. It says, they keep the Republicans in line. Oh, you're talking about the Koch brothers. With a possible denial of funding and primary challenges. It's an alliance of the libertarian right, racists, and Christian traditionalists. Property supremacy. Yes, I've heard some people describe it as corporate socialism, but the supremacy of property is a good phrase for it as well. The Koch network includes the Mercers and is intertwined with the Russian oligarchy. It's a group that's behind climate change skepticism. Yes, I guess so. I mean, I often talk about Rupert Murdoch being behind climate change skepticism. We have a Murdoch columnist who came out with today a newspaper column article saying global warming is good for us. Very Orwellian, and very Orwellian that they've changed the name of the Department of Health and Human Services to the Department of Life. Yes, Robert Mercer funded the smear campaign against Biden and Clinton, certainly, and helped fund Cambridge Analytica, which is a psychological warfare program against democracies all around the world. They use psychographic techniques to wage war against the public through mass manipulation techniques, through compiling data on people, stealing data from Facebook, etc., to build psychological profiles of people using computing power so that you can target millions of people, organizing them according to their fears, their areas of interest, and targeting arguments that will be most specifically appealing to them. Like that Tom Cruise movie, not Mission Impossible, the future one. Who remembers the name of that future movie that Tom Cruise was in which you walk to an airport and all the billboards you see have scanned your retina and target ads specifically towards you and your tastes. So it's like that, but it's election ads, and they're dark and they're on Facebook and they're targeted towards your predilections, whether that be favoring gun rights. You'll see deceitful ads that tell you all your rights to own a gun will be instantly removed under a Democratic presidency. Or you're concerned about Islamic terrorism, and you'll see that if you vote for President Hillary Clinton, you will immediately be thrust into a war in which ISIS defeat American forces and overpower the United States. Yes. Can we get rid of this guy again, please? Not again. He's a new guy. Also, we didn't. Oh, why should I promote them? Let's put up a NASA link instead. Although the first thing I'll put up is my Patreon account, which is a different name to DavCat. And I should try and make it more consistent for brand consistency. I hear that's important. And I never want to look like a grifter, but at the same time, this is new media. I support new media. I decry CNN because Jeff Zucker is friends with Trump, and he can play both sides and still turn a very tidy profit by just feeding into the dynamics of both supporting Trump and undermining Trump. Because it doesn't take a lot to help a populace stay in power. Populists have supporters who are irrational and impervious to evidence. So there's had to be so much evidence against Trump to even shave off any of his support. And as you can see from the fairly consistent 40 or so % support that Trump's enjoyed as an approval rating across his 3 years of occupation of the Oval Office, that 40% of people are stoutly resolute to scandal, to evidence of corruption spreading in the US government, whatever they might have defined as a swamp, and hoped for Trump to be the swamp drainer. Trump is definitely the swamp expander. And usually Americans don't like being suckers, and usually Americans don't like facilitating corruption. But unfortunately, Trump allied himself with the irrationality of this contrarian position that whatever the government was doing in relation to preventing Islamic terrorism, Islamic extremist terrorism, wasn't enough, and that the weak, soppy left were being too tolerant, and that had to be overturned by voting for a strong man, a strong-arm fascist character. So we shouldn't be surprised that so many forces allied to make that possible, because they could all see the potential appeal in it. The Mercers and the Koch brothers all saw that Trump had a false reputation as a businessman, could pretend to be a manifestation of the American dream, that even if people acknowledged he'd had some business failures, that to them Trump would represent business entrepreneurial spirit in America, that even when you fail, you get up again and you are a self-made man. And it's very telling that some people said to pollsters that their interest in voting for Trump increased after the Access Hollywood tape was released, where Trump was heard saying that he would grab women by their genitalia if he wanted to do so, that he was that impervious to consequence because of his fame. If you're famous, you can do anything. He didn't say famous and rich, because I guess maybe Trump knows he's not that rich, but he is famous, undeservedly famous for being rich, because he's not really rich, he's heavily in debt. And I once circulated a clip of Ivana Trump talking to a documentary maker about how in 1981, when her parents divorced and she was about 10 years old, she and her father walked past a homeless man on the pavement. And her father, Donald Trump, said to her at that point, "That guy is $8 billion richer than me," because the homeless guy with nothing was not $8 billion in debt as Donald Trump was. And Ivanka Trump told this to the documentary makers as evidence of how proud she was of her father's ability to claw his way back up. But you don't readily claw your way back up of $8 billion worth of debt without being involved in significant criminal activity. So I don't think Ivanka Trump would make that admission again today, that her father had ever been $8 billion worth in debt, because a lot of people would recognize that as being a vulnerability to corruption. And we can see already that Trump has settled lawsuits for $25 million about his Trump University being a fraudulent enterprise. He's closed his charity. His children have been asked to take classes to educate them on the ethics of running a charity because they defrauded people who donated to what they thought was a veterans charity, and Trump diverted that money to his own political campaign in 2016. I'll put up also, this is the name of my YouTube channel, DavCat43. And I'll put up the name of an article as well, which points out that all of this does precede Trump in that Republicans have falsely traded off a reputation for fiscal responsibility when for decades worth of government rule, Democratic presidents have reduced the deficit and Republican presidents have significantly increased it. That essentially too many Americans are dupes for conservative media that pretend because Republicans talk more about fiscal responsibility that they are the true guardians or the best chosen, most responsible guardians of the public purse, when they are in fact the most irresponsible and most economically destructive guardians of the public purse. This is another article I wish to promote, an NBC News article, which goes through links between Dmitry Firtash, and he paid $1 million to what they call a Giuliani ally, and is Lev Parnas. Dmitry Firtash paid Lev Parnas' wife $1 million shortly prior to Lev Parnas and Igor From's arrest at Dulles Airport with the one-way ticket to Vienna. That's important for us to know, because even as we are interested in supporting Parnas or tempted to support Parnas, he's still a mobster. He's still been receiving millions of dollars from Putin's friend, Dmitry Firtash, who is, yes, another one of those corrupt fossil fuel executives and investors who make money from facilitating the destruction of the human race. Not all at the same time. People in Australia are more likely to die first. People in regions where there's a significant dependence on aquaculture, so marine life, people who eat a lot of fish, cultures who have a lot of a significant fishing industry comprising a significant part of their gross domestic product or GDP. Those countries might see a significant downturn in their GDPs first, but there's likely to also be a disruption to agricultural systems worldwide with a decrease in the nutritional value of crops and a decrease in crops in other cases as well. There's so much more that needs to be done to protect us as communities, as nations, that is not being done because of the obstacles put in our way by self-interested profit mongers. Hello.
Hi.
Oh, come in. I'm just broadcasting, darling. But come on in. Yes. So, I have been overlooking comments for a little while now. Let's have a look. The oligarchy vision for the US is a return to the 19th century with very, very limited but strong central government and focus on personal responsibility. Pinochet Chile is close. Constitutional change. That's an interesting point. I mean, in Pinochet's Chile, people who supported progressive government were thrown from helicopters in an extremely violent, like helicopters in midair, as an extremely violent, oh gosh, that's a bad thing to talk about today, isn't it? Because we've had a significant helicopter crash that is already saddening much of America. But yes, still, I will just say then that the Pinochet government of Chile murdered a lot of people who were political opponents to Pinochet. He's guilty of war crimes. He had to flee the country. And yes, that a lot of right-wing supporters were wearing images of that on T-shirts not too long ago. There's a lot of very brainwashed right-wing Americans, as well as being a fair amount of brainwashed far-left Americans as well. Alexander is saying that the guys who are still with Trump are beyond reach. They have committed to the war mentality. They think they are protecting the future. Yes, I've seen women post pictures of babies and say, look at these white babies, or look at this beautiful white baby. We're protecting her. We're fighting for her future so that she's not a despised minority in her own country. And Bannon fears that women are taking over the world and men are losing their stature. To a degree, a lot of the prestige associated with masculinity has gone. Still a lot of it left, though. Women thought that it was okay to tinker with the balance, but losing anything feels like something to resist for people who have it to start with. So men who have power and prestige associated purely with being a man, they resist losing it. They point out their sacrifices. And it's true, men are often cannon fodder. They're taught to be courageous, which means valuing their individual life less and putting more value on the success of a group. So in a way, it would be great to try to harness that protective power of men more in service of protecting us all from the negative outcomes of climate change. If we were able to talk about that on more of a war footing, because I think there are a lot of men on the side of wanting to save not the planet, but save humanity and save communities. If we put it in that more personal way, perhaps that's an easier way to build consensus about the need for everybody to be on board and for men to exhibit more leadership in this way. Although Greta seems to have gotten a lot more traction than Al Gore. So maybe we do need to hear the message from women, but we just need men to know that they should be getting on board as well. Alexander asks, what F is up with the random trolls? And I would say, welcome to the internet, my friend. Random trolls exist. They're probably paid a pittance to try and shut down debate and information. The DeVos family is part from the Christian line. They want a private school system with strong religious indoctrination. This is true. Eric Prince is a very bad man who cheated on his pregnant wife, impregnated the nanny his wife who was dying of cancer. He wrote about it in his own autobiography as this unfortunate circumstance of impregnating the nanny while his wife was dying. I say that as a woman, but I should really say the greater injustice that he's associated with is Blackwater. His mercenary private security people who tortured detainees and humiliated Muslim people in Iraq during that war that so many people fought so hard to prevent from happening, but it happened, and atrocities followed suit. All right. This is not the most tidy writing I've ever done, so I'm going to rub it off. But I still am leaving the whiteboard up because I want people to know that I am always interested in brainstorming ideas for how to best defeat Trumpism. So if you can read that headline and have any suggestions, this whiteboard screen is blank, and if you have good ideas, I will add them to the whiteboard. Because we shouldn't just come here to confirm ideas with each other and confirm the facts, although not going crazy in the face of widespread disinformation and propaganda is important. But yes, brainstorming how to defeat Trumpism and what the emotional angle is to try and bring on board more white men. Although maybe the fact that more and more white women without a college degree have dropped their support for Trump. Maybe those women who are directly related to and connected to white men without a college degree, maybe they can exercise a degree of persuasiveness. Maybe our task is to help teach those women about Lysistrata, about various campaigns around the world in which women have tampered down their participation in sexual activity in order to reduce war behavior from the men. Hi, darling.
Hi.
So Alexander says, misogynistic reactionaries do not want to be rewarded for heroism. They want women to be dependent on men and punished for infidelity or any transgression. Yes, I guess they're not attached to a healthy division of power. They want to return to a more oppressive power dynamic. Kevin's idea is getting out and voting. Yes, that gives me the idea. My charity of today to promote can be Fair Fight. So I'll just find details of that. Stacey Abrams started that charity. Here we go. It's got a website. All right. Okay, I'll put that up on a banner. There we go. That is Stacey Abrams' page. Share screen with the tab Fair Fight. Oops. Done. All right. So this is Stacey Abrams' charity called Fair Fight. You can join them. You can volunteer with them. But just even talking about it, helping them advocate for measures to counteract the voter suppression efforts of the Republican Party. So if we understand that, yes, Republicans are essentially on a criminal bent to sabotage American democracy, to tip elections over towards them, not through broadening their appeal to American voters, but by denying various subsections of American voting populations access to voting. So here you go. Fair Fight is fighting back from illegal voter purges to hundreds of poll closures to 4-hour lines. Georgia voters have faced a sophisticated but hauntingly familiar attack on their right to vote. Hundreds of thousands of voters were affected by poor election management and systematic voter suppression, crippling Georgia's democracy. So they've got a 3-pronged strategy of litigation, legislation, and advocacy. So here we go. We should, to protect American democracy, join Fair Fight in advocating for a robust network of grassroots activists that work to strengthen democracy at all levels. This is probably one of the most productive things we could do with our time. They've exposed corruption and fought back against 2019 legislation that, under the guise of election reform, puts special interests and vendors before voters. Fair Fight filed a historic rights lawsuit in federal court against the Georgia Secretary of State's office and Georgia Board of Elections, challenging the gross mismanagement of the 2018 midterm election that discouraged and disenfranchised voters. Look at this fantastic stuff. You could be getting mobile alerts from them. We should be doing that. There's so much more that we could be doing to support people fighting for the integrity of American elections. Because Mitch McConnell and the Senate Republicans are blocking all of the measures that have been introduced to safeguard American election security. For a reason. They're a bunch of cheating criminals, and it's difficult to see a pathway to redemption for them. In the meantime, we shouldn't be looking for a pathway to redemption for them. We should be looking to what we can do locally to change the balance of power. Stacey Abrams is trying to find avenues that she can do that, and she has. So I think it's so important in this time and in this era to recognize that the people with the most to lose and the clearest commitment to improving things rather than just indulging in utopian views of the future that may be overly rose-colored about the voting habits and tendencies of American voters are people of color who have put in the hard yards to try and positively impact American democracy. Similarly, in Australia, there's another charity that I could promote. This is for Australians. Pay the Rent. And this is a charity. Maybe it's .com. It's interesting. I can't find this charity very easily, but it's maybe if I put in the word Aboriginal. Because essentially it's a move bypassing okay, I can promote an article about it. Here we go. And I can put it up on screen. And share. Because there is no treaty with the Aboriginal inhabitants of Australia, and it's just very important to take into account the opinions and the initiatives of people who have ideas about countering white supremacy and just sort of normalcy biases that say everything's fine as it is, continue to ignore history and ignore massacres, continue to subscribe to fake ideas about Aboriginal people and how they should just get over the fact that generations of Aboriginal children were taken from their parents as part of a social improvement eugenics ideology that the Aboriginal race would die out if we just put Aboriginal children in with white families and then brought them up like that without knowing their families anymore, without any influence from Aboriginal culture, and that they could then maybe marry into the white population and so dilute their Aboriginal genetic composition. So that's, most of us should be familiar with eugenicism. Oh, I can share a link to a YouTube video about it. That's exciting. So this was a scheme.
Good grammar and spelling are important, but if you
a scheme to help Australians show that they acknowledge what was wrong.
And emails that get the job
done. I can put it up on a banner.
Think about more than just grammar and spelling. This sentence is grammatically correct, but it's wordy and hard to read.
It should be a comment.
It undermines the writer's message, and the word choice is bland.
Paul wants to know how Naroz is doing.
Technology helps you craft compelling, understandable writing.
Haven't spoken to him for a little bit. I think he's okay.
Much better.
I will use this reminder to say hello to him.
Or your phone.
I think the last I saw he was being mistreated by guards at the detention center and was posting a video about it.
Are you ready to give it a try? Installation is simple and free. Visit Grammarly.com
today. The average worker is a big part of the target audience and is on average more socially conservative than Rogan.
We do this every year and you still get lost.
Yes, true. Whoa.
You have the right of way.
I just changed something around a lot accidentally. Okay, whoa. There we go. Hi, everyone. I think I've exhausted the talking points that I wanted to go through today, but I'm proud to have put up some charities that I think are important. And
Hello? Oh,
put up the fact that Aboriginals are asking for reparations in a way that circumvents government, that's just straight from Australians who recognise the need to pay reparations. So it's a voluntary scheme where willing Australians pay a percentage of their income, such as 1%, to a body led by Indigenous elders, one that is genuinely controlled by the community. So I think, with money, obviously, there's always a temptation to behave corruptly, but at the same time, our government is behaving quite corruptly all on its own. So it's fair to propose mechanisms that allow Australians who feel not personally culpable, but recognise that we are all personally benefiting from the white supremacy that has persecuted Aboriginal Australians for 2 centuries now.
Assistance one can change things.
So Paul's seen the video Narose put up, that he was handcuffed for medical treatment and the handcuffs were themselves causing him problems. Brian's saying he had to go for a bit. That's okay, Brian. You never have to apologise for going. I always welcome the presence of anybody who joins in with my live broadcasts. Oh. I think I'm going to go, guys. I think my voice is running a little low on batteries. I'll go drink some more water and try and cool down a little bit. Thanks for joining in. Fingers crossed that John Bolton is made to testify, or that he is made to speak to the media, that he's already confirmed that the book extracts are not fictional and not a phony leak, and that we could be joining in with this website that I'm promoting here, fairfight.com, in which you can get text alerts and find ways to act locally to support shoring up the American electoral system, protecting the integrity of America's elections. And that's a great way. Limbus Van is saying that Trump to Bolton wrote, continue with the Ukrainian aid freeze until investigation into Biden opened. Craig is asking me for what's my feel as to where this mess is going. No idea. No idea of the depth of criminality into which the Republican Party has sunk. No idea of the numbers of Republican senators who feel any moral courage. No idea of the percentage of the American people who will react badly to suppression efforts, to the sham elements of the trial, that Mitch McConnell is likely to still whip the Republican senators into not supporting a vote for witnesses and documents to be allowed in Trump's impeachment trial. It's a changing landscape. The Bolton revelations do put pressure on McConnell and the Republican senators to allow witnesses, because he's obviously such a critical witness. But at the same time, the Republicans are acting in such bad faith that they're quite likely to continue to argue against witnesses and documents, because they know that the more evidence that comes out of Trump's guilt, the more it tars them with the brush of Trump's corruption. So the more the public realizes exactly how corrupt Trump has been, the more punished they will be at an electoral level for being the party of Trump, that supported him, that promoted him, that let him do this much damage to American national interests, to American geopolitical interests, to American security interests. So yeah, it's difficult for Republicans, because by being honest or by facilitating justice, they are condemning themselves. So all I know is that as individuals, for Americans, they can act to pressure Republican senators, to add to the amount of public pressure saying witnesses and documents are important to us, and we will condemn you for facilitating a sham trial if you don't do this. Yes, they're in between a rock and a hard place, but the hardness of both sides needs to be made clear to them, particularly the side that would serve the public the best, the allowing of witnesses and documents in Trump's impeachment trial. Alexander, thank you for thanking me. I do appreciate positive feedback. You thought Trump was done since you heard the leak came from the security agency sector. The military, state security, and diplomatic staff want Trump out and want him punished. That's good. So you think the leak came from the National Security Council? That would be good, wouldn't it? The more people of conscience in the American government, in various civil staffing positions, do what they can to oust this traitor, the better. And you would hope that people of conscience feel the pull towards justice more than they feel a pull towards sharing in the power of a fascist state, because that can be very attractive to people. But the more noise the public makes, the more we increase that pull towards justice and towards moral courage. Also, Alexander is talking about not this leak, the very first one. Do you mean the whistleblower?
Restitution, which is giving people back their land, their language, their culture.
Jay Cat saying that there's confirmation from more sources than the New York Times. Well, yes, Bolton's lawyers have said that they didn't anticipate that this would be leaked, i.e. confirming that the leak is of real extracts from Bolton's book. So, yes, thank you for joining in, guys. I'll go and hope to see you tomorrow. I'll broadcast again at this time with any luck. What time would it be tomorrow? Let's see.
Is it possible that Australians would be up for contributing part of their property tax dollars to a reparation scheme? Fortunately, there are people that know way more about this pay the rent stuff than I do. So I asked Alex to talk to Richard Dennis to find out if a property tax is the best way to fund
I'm just trying to...
And I caught up with Milroy woman Natalie Croft. Natalie comes from a legal background and has been writing about this stuff for a while.
Oh.
I think in Australian politics...
Okay, no, I guess that was too complicated a calculation for my phone to do, but should be about 5 p.m. in general time now. What? Actually, I could just ask you guys, what's the time now where you are? Folks that are in America or Canada, what time is it for you now? And if you are hoping to see me tomorrow, what topics do you think I should potentially consider tomorrow? I'll write it down on my blackboard if you have any suggestions.
We apologise for the laws and policies of successive parliaments.
And I'll put the Fair Fight page up once more,
on these, our fellow Australians.
because to me that's probably the most valuable contribution I can make, is to promote this charity or this organization that facilitates Americans working together. Look, advocacy. I'll click on the advocacy page. Oh, no, that's not a page.
People work in Australia, but it takes the right mindset. And I think that given that for over 230 years it's been breadcrumbs on a place.
So, yes, if we get more information about how America's elections are under attack, like the poll taxes and literary tests of the Jim Crow era, modern voter suppression efforts are relentless and effective. Oh, look at all these. There's stories you can read. There's thousands of absentee ballot applications were lost or rejected, disenfranchising voters, particularly voters of color. In Georgia, nearly 30,000 voters were forced to vote on a provisional ballot, most of which did not count. So look, I've seen so many white people on Twitter say, oh, do absentee ballots, they're great. But what if Republicans have found ways to purposefully lose absentee ballots or purposefully lose provisional ballots? What if Republicans have found ways to use name recognition techniques that recognize African-American sounding names and target them for purging from the voter rolls? Or just purge as many people as they can, knowing that Democrats are more likely to be deterred if they're purged from a role, whereas Republican conservative voters are often very animated to believing that they individually are all needed to vote, because they do buy in more strongly to that philosophy of individual responsibility. We need, as people on the left, to start promoting individual responsibility as a key way to increase democratic participation in elections. We need to say to young people, yep, we're not trying to overburden you with shame for the whole fabric of modern society. Put down that shame and challenge yourself to do your duty. Vote and help other people's vote. Oh, JCat, I just got a notification that you subscribed to my YouTube channel, and I thank you heartily for that. That also reminds me to show people what the name of my YouTube channel is. It's DavCat43. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everybody. Talk to you soon. This is the name of my podcast, which is available on all podcasting platforms. I take audio from here so that people who haven't listened to the whole thing or don't have time to listen to my broadcasts can listen to podcasts at their leisure. And for anybody who wants to throw money at me as if to support a new type of media, I appreciate not many people will want to do that, but for those few of you who have the means and the interest in doing so, that is my Patreon account. I have 4 Patreons already, and it is actually incredibly helpful in terms of purchasing broadcasting supplies like microphones and paying for websites, such as this StreamYard website that allows me to broadcast simultaneously to YouTube and Periscope. So thanks again for your support. Thank you very much, very heartily as well to my 4 Patreons, and take care, everybody. Thanks, Limbus Van. So I started being on at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, Brian. And that was 7 o'clock in Los Angeles. Bellingcat is good. Yes, I know they're great investigators. Limbus Van says you should run, which I'll put up for a second because that's a lovely compliment, although I don't know what you're suggesting I should run for. It's probably an American position you're suggesting I should run for, which would be difficult at this point. Maybe in the future, if we do eventually move to Boston, I will be able to run for local office. That would be great. Run for something. That's the name of an organization that helps promote people who might not typically consider themselves as candidates for election. But in this era where moral courage needs to be in greater supply, it might just be time to visit that website, run for something, and find a way to use your decency, whatever decency you have, whatever immunity you have to dangerous propaganda and dangerous subscription to fascist values and philosophies. Bring your decency to the table of American politics or wherever in the world you live. Thank you. Bye.
How should I approach it if they go, why would I pay for something that happened so long ago?
I think
Australian office.
yeah.
Yes. Thank you for the suggestion. Bye. Bye, everyone.